Welcome, fight fans, to another episode of Ringside. This is your host, Zachary Cloutier, and today we'll be doing a career overview of Deontay Wilder. As of late, Deontay Wilder's career has seemingly ended, with a string of back-to-back losses against Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang. This has marked me to make a video about Deontay Wilder and to analyze his interesting and illustrious career with 42 knockouts out of his 43 wins and a plethora of videos who have said he is a fraud and a very big hype job in the boxing scene. But today, I will be attempting to find out the truth of truly how good Deontay Wilder was. Let's get started. In Deontay Wilder's early career, he got a bronze medal in the 2008 Olympics. He started boxing at the age of 18 to help receive money for his daughter, a noble cause to start a sport like boxing. After getting a bronze medal, he made his professional debut on November 15th of 2008 against a beginner journeyman named Ethan Cox. At the time, Cox held a record of 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. Wilder would TKO him in the second round and move on to fight a plethora of other beginner journeymen, such as Shannon Gray, Richard Green Jr., Joseph Robet, and Charles Brown. But it would not be until 2010, on October 15th of 2010, where he would face Harold Sconiers. With a record of 17 wins, 20 losses, and 2 draws, this would be Deontay Wilder's first experienced journeyman. After this, Deontay Wilder would face and KO many numerous experienced journeymen, such as Dan Sheehan in the first round, D. Andre, a TKO in the second round, Reggie Piana, a TKO in the first round, Damian Reed, a KO in the second round, and so on. But Deontay Wilder's real step up in competition would not come until 2012 on August 4th, where he would face contender Curtison Manswell, who held a record of 23 wins, 5 losses, and 0 draws. Wilder would easily dismantle Manswell, TKOing him in the first round. For his next bout on September 8th of 2012, he would face undefeated prospect Damon McKeary, and he would easily KO him in the second round. Now, after this, Wilder's career would take a turn, where he would face even better opponents and experienced individuals like Audley Harrison. Now, Audley Harrison was Wilder's first good career win, as Audley Harrison had notable fights against David Haye, a former heavyweight champion and cruiserweight champion, who had fought the likes of Vladimir Klitschko and others. He had also KO'd Nikolai Valuev, a 7-foot heavyweight giant, which was one of David Haye's best wins. Audley Harrison would have also fought in David Price, who was a country-level contender, but a notable prospect in his early years. Audley Harrison would lose by TKO in the first round to David Price, and in his final fight, he would lose to Deontay Wilder. Now, Deontay Wilder beating Audley Harrison at the latter areas of his career is not that impressive, but Harrison was extremely experienced and a notable opponent. For Wilder's next large career win, he would face and beat Malik Scott in 1 out of 12 rounds with a brutal KO. Now, Malik Scott at the time had a win of 36 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And Malik Scott had fought the likes of Derek Chisora, losing to him in 6 rounds, and at the end of his career, he had lost to Luis Ortiz with a unanimous decision. Now, Scott was down multiple times in this battle, but he still managed to rein the distance, and Luis Ortiz is a solid contender, who would eventually also lose to Deontay Wilder. But Malik Scott also beat the likes of Alex Leopai, I believe, who was a former opponent of Vitaly Klitschko, who lasted 10 rounds against Klitschko, and he would also fight Tony Thompson, who was an individual Vladimir Klitschko defended his unified heavyweight championship. Now, both of these contenders were very old when they fought them, but were all experienced and well-known contenders in the heavyweight division. And despite them being at the latter half of their career, I still marked them as worthy opponents. After beating Malik Scott, Deontay Wilder would get his first world title shot against Bermane Stiverne in his only unanimous decision win. Stiverne is also a contender who is a continental level contender and not worthy of any type of world championship. Stiverne was one of the weakest heavyweight champions, as many boxing fans say, to ever be a champion. And Wilder would win by unanimous decision, which wasn't necessarily impressive, as Stiverne wasn't that truly good of an opponent. But Stiverne, in his own right, did face the likes of Joe Joyce later in his career, Trevor Bryan, who is a top 100 or top 120 contender, but not much more besides the likes of Chris Arreola, who was a former individual who challenged for the heavyweight title. After beating Bermane Stiverne, he would fight the likes of Eric Molina, who was also a solid, experienced contender, and KO him in 9 out of 12 rounds. Now, Molina actually lost to Chris Arreola, who lost to Bermane Stiverne, and Deontay Wilder KO'd him in 9 rounds. Molina also had faced Anthony Joshua after Deontay Wilder, which is a surprising aspect. And this will later play into comparing Wilder with the other contenders of his time. Afterward, Wilder fought the likes of John Dupas, Artur Szpilka, and Chris Arreola, actually. And he would also face Gerald Washington, an undefeated contender. And then he would KO Bermane Stiverne in 1 out of 12 rounds. Now, with Wilder's best win yet, he would then face Luis Ortiz, who at the time had a record of 28 wins, 0 losses, and 0 draws. Wilder would KO him in 10 out of 12 rounds after being outboxed for the entire fight. After this, Wilder would have a draw with Tyson Fury, who was the best opponent he ever faced, at least in my opinion. Then he would KO Dominic Breazeale, who's another common opponent with Anthony Joshua. Then Wilder would face Luis Ortiz again and KO him even earlier in 7 rounds. Then Wilder would have the back-to-back losses to Fury, in which in the second fight Fury completely dominated Wilder and showed that Fury was truly one of the greatest heavyweights of this era. In the second fight with Fury, Wilder did somewhat better, but he was also down multiple times, but he had dropped Fury multiple times as well, showing that he did still have a lot left in his tank for his career. Now, one of Wilder's best wins is his win after the back-to-back losses to Fury, which is over Robert Helenius, who he KO'd with a punch that was almost a tap. It wasn't even a punch that Wilder had put any effort in, and seemingly he completely destroyed Robert Helenius in 1 round. And afterward, and most recently, Wilder had his dominating loss to Joseph Parker and his TKO loss to Zhilei Zhang in 5 rounds. Now, Wilder these days has shown that he is no longer at his best, or no longer seemingly has the motivation to KO or try to take out any of his opponents in any way. But some have said Wilder is a very big hype job because many of his KOs came against unworthy opponents of a title defense. And I will say this is somewhat true. But based on Wilder's power, there are many top 10, top 15, top 20, and even top 30 contenders during Wilder's era who also probably could have not taken Wilder's power and probably would have been beaten by Deontay Wilder in one of his many title defenses if he were to fight them. For example, in Wilder's heavyweight reign as WBC champion, he most likely would have beaten the likes of Dillian Whyte or maybe an Otto Wallin. Now, Otto Wallin is a little bit more debatable because Otto Wallin did take Fury the distance and was a very skilled boxer. However, was easily dismantled by Anthony Joshua recently, but that is arguable to say how good Otto Wallin is now. But Otto Wallin only being 33 means he is relatively still at his peak. Next, there is also Joseph Parker, which I believe Wilder could have beaten pretty easily. But Joseph Parker is also a very skilled opponent, in which Wilder might have lost, as he actually did lose to Joseph Parker very recently. But Wilder in his prime is somewhat debatable. That fight may have gone more 50-50 at that point in time. But lastly, there is the likes of Derek Chisora, who Wilder probably would have also beaten, or the likes of Kubrat Pulev, who did have a title shot with Vladimir Klitschko, but I think Wilder could have also KO'd Pulev. Now, Wilder was to fight Alexander Povetkin, But that fight never happened. And I believe that fight would have also been a 50-50. But if Wilder had caught him with an accurate right hand, I believe the fight would have ended. But in short, I believe Wilder would have been able to beat some of the notable top 20, top 15, and top 10 heavyweights, such as Dillian White, maybe Otto Wallin, Derek Chisora, Kubrat Pulev, maybe Jarrell Miller, and others who are prominent at that time, such as maybe Carlos Takam. In that case, I regard Wilder as definitely a top 10 heavyweight contender in his era of title glory. And I do not denounce Wilder necessarily as a hype job, because I believe his wins over the likes of Luis Ortiz proved that he could have beaten certain elite heavyweights. In an overall ranking, I believe Wilder would have ranked somewhere at the 4 to 7 range and not at the 2 or 3 range that Fury permitted him to be when he faced him. So I believe Wilder was a notable heavyweight and led a career that was extremely impactful in the modern and closing era of heavyweights. In the new era of heavyweights, I believe that Wilder would have left a good legacy, and I would like to see a character like him once again. This is Zachary Cloutier from Ringside. I'll see you in the next episode.